The air bites. His breath, a ghost in the frigid dawn. Miles deep in an unforgiving wilderness, a lone figure moves. Not a sound, just the crunch of snow underfoot if he's careless. But he's not. This isn't a stroll. This is the long hunt. Survival here isn't a game. It's a brutal, relentless test of will, of skill, of an almost forgotten instinct. For the frontiersman, the trapper, the explorer, the shadow in the trees, life hangs by a thread. And that thread? Often it's the success of this chase, not for sport, for sustenance. A dance as old as time, predator and prey, etched into the frozen earth. My name is Sam, and this is Wild America. Today, we're not talking about a quick shot from a comfortable blind. We're diving deep into the heart of what it took to survive out here. The painstaking art of tracking, following a whisper of a sign for miles, sometimes days, across terrain that would break most men. It demanded more than a keen eye, more than a steady hand. It demanded a primal connection to the land, an intuition that spoke the silent language of the wild, patience that could outlast stone. These weren't just hunts. They were sagas. Silent, brutal ballets of endurance, observation, and an unwavering focus on the prize. Reading the faintest track, moving like a phantom, anticipating an animal's every breath. These were the lost arts that kept a man alive when everything else wanted him dead. Join me. Let's uncover how these masters of the wilderness stalked the great beasts of the American frontier. It's a story of grit, of instinct, and of a bond with the wild that few today can even imagine. Part 1. Reading the land and the signs. The long hunt didn't start with the crack of a rifle. It started in silence, with the eyes, with the mind. Before a frontiersman even dreamt of the stalk, he had to become a scholar of the wild's silent tongue. Every bent blade of grass, each overturned stone, the faintest whisper of a depression in the soil. These weren't just details. They were words, sentences, a story unfolding on the forest floor, in the heart of the prairie. His life depended on reading it right. Picture it, a vast snow-choked forest or a sun-scorched plain stretching to forever. To a greenhorn, just empty land. To the tracker, an open book, every page filled with clues. Sure, he'd spot the obvious, a clear hoofprint in mud, but his art ran deeper, much deeper. He could taste the age of a track by its sharpness, by the lingering dampness, by the way the crushed grass beneath it was fighting to spring back. Was the beast walking calm, trotting with purpose, or running scared, heart-hammering? The spacing, the depth. It all screamed answers. One old trapper put it plain. A hunter must be a close observer of signs, for the earth speaks to those who listen. And listen they did, or they starved. He'd crouch, examining droppings. Freshness? Content? It told him what the animal ate, how long ago it passed. A twig nibbled just so, a patch of bark rubbed raw on a tree, a single strand of hair snagged on a thorn. Nothing was too small. Nothing. These were the breadcrumbs. The invisible trail leading, often over miles of brutal, unforgiving country, to a hot meal and another day of life. He learned the subtle tells. A bull bison from a cow, not just by size, but by the swagger in its gait. A mature elk from a yearling by the way it ghosted through the timber. He knew how a hard frost would sharpen a track, how heavy snow could swallow it in minutes, forcing him to rely on even fainter clues. The way snow dusted branches, the almost imperceptible warmth still clinging to a freshly abandoned bed. This wasn't just dot to dot with hoofprints. This was painting a full picture. Where was it going? To water? A hidden salt lick? A bedding ground thick with shadows? Was it alone? Part of a herd? Senses multiplied? Wary, every nerve ending screaming danger? Or relaxed, unaware of the phantom on its trail? Answering these questions took more than luck. It took a lifetime of watching, of learning, of failing, and going hungry. The land itself was the harshest teacher. Its lessons, often paid in blood and sweat, were always true. The frontiersman who couldn't read these signs? He was a dead man walking. He simply wouldn't eat. Part 2. The Art of Stalking. A ghost in the wilderness. Signs read. Quarry pinpointed or damn close. Now the real test. The stalk, patience, stealth. An animal's senses screaming danger at the slightest whisper of a threat. This was the razor's edge. Approaching an elk with eyes that could spot a hawk's shadow at a mile, ears that swiveled like radar dishes. Or a bison whose nose could catch a man's scent on a wind long before he was seen. This wasn't just walking quietly. This was an art, forged in failure, honed by hunger. One wrong move, one snapped twig, one careless shift of the wind. And hours, maybe days of brutal tracking vanished. Gone. The animal, a ghost in the timber. The wind, the hunter's fickle friend, his most brutal critic. Always keep the wind in your face. A law carved in stone, passed down through generations. He tasted it, felt it on a wetted finger, watched the grass bend to its will. A stalk often meant a long, agonizing detour, miles added to an already crushing journey just to stay downwind. He had to become a shadow, melt into the land, every dip in the earth, every clump of sage, every ancient tree trunk, his cover. He moved like smoke, slow, deliberate, freezing for minutes that stretched into eternity if the animal so much as twitched an ear. His clothes weren't fashion, they were survival. Buckskins, the color of dirt and dry leaves. In winter, maybe white, to become one with the snow. He learned to walk like the prey itself, feet placed with impossible care. Moccasins sometimes shed to feel the earth, to silence his passage. He knew dead ground, the unseen folds in the land that let him close the gap. He knew to break his silhouette, to avoid the skyline where he'd be a stark, fatal target. A seasoned mountain man's words to a novice. Become part of the landscape, not an intruder upon it. Think like the deer, and you'll find the deer. Sound advice, deadly advice, and a herd, a whole new nightmare. Dozens, hundreds of eyes, ears, noses, all tuned to the frequency of survival. He'd pick one, an animal on the edge. Then every ounce of his being focused on that single creature. A game of inches, a slow-motion ballet of life and death that could unspool over agonizing hours. The physical toll? Immense. But the mental game? That was the true crucible. To stay perfectly still, muscles screaming, joints locking, while waiting for that one chance. That one moment when the animal dropped its guard. That was the mark of the master. This wasn't for the impatient, not for the easily broken. This was the domain of the dedicated, the men who had learned to merge their own senses with the primal rhythm of the wild. To become the ghost in the wilderness. Part 3. The Tracker's True Tools. More than just steel. Yeah, the rifle was there, the Hawken, the Kentucky long rifle. Later, the Sharps. A man's best friend, some called it, and it was vital. But it wasn't his most important tool, not by a long shot. The real instruments of the long hunt? They weren't forged in fire and steel. They were honed in the silent, brutal crucible of experience. Day after day, year after year, unwavering observation. These were the tools of the mind, of the senses, an arsenal of raw, hard-won knowledge and gut-deep intuition that no amount of silver could ever buy. A frontiersman's eyes. These were his primary weapon, sharpened by necessity to a razor's edge, trained to pick out the unnatural, the flick of an ear in grass so tall it could hide a buffalo, the wrong line of an antler against a distant, snow-dusted tree line, the subtle shift in color, almost invisible, that betrayed a deer bedded down in deep shadow. He learned to see not just what was there, but what wasn't. The sudden, chilling silence of birdsong, a warning that a predator, or himself, was near. The unnatural stillness in a patch of woods that should be alive with movement. An old plainsman, his words scratched into a worn journal, knew it. The wilderness does not yield its secrets easily, but to the watchful eye, it is a constant revelation. And those revelations kept a man breathing. His knowledge of animal behavior? It was an encyclopedia etched in his brain. He knew their preferred feeding times, their secret bedding habits for every damn creature he hunted. He understood their seasonal wanderings, how they'd react to a sudden blizzard or a crack of thunder. Their escape routes, their panicked calls, the subtle language of their fear. He knew a bull elk in the heart of the rut was a different beast entirely from one in the dead of winter, gaunt and wary. He knew a bison herd on the move, a river of dark fur, was less alert than one grazing quiet, heads down. This wasn't guesswork. This deep, intimate understanding let him anticipate. To be in the right place at the killing time. Or to know with a certainty that settled in his bones when a stalk was a fool's errand, a waste of precious energy. Patience, maybe his most underrated weapon, but it was vital. The long hunt was often just that. Long, hours, days even, slow, meticulous, agonizing tracking, waiting, motionless, for that one perfect fleeting chance, the ability to endure crushing discomfort, the gnawing boredom, the acid burn of uncertainty without losing that laser focus. That was a testament to a will of iron. No guarantees out here. None. Many hunts ended empty-handed, with a hollow gut and the bitter taste of failure. But the true frontiersman, the one who survived, understood. Patience often tipped the scales from death to life. A grizzled old trapper, his face a roadmap of hard winters, said it best. The mountains teach you to wait. The game teaches you to wait. If you can't learn that, you'll go hungry. And hungry out here was a slow, cold death. And then, intuition, that almost mystical sixth sense, the one a hunter earned after 1,000 sunrises in the wild. It was everything he knew, everything he'd seen, everything he'd felt, all boiled down, simmering in his subconscious. It let him make calls that seemed like black magic to a greenhorn. That gut feeling, the one that screamed, check over that next rise. The one that whispered, hold. Just one more second. This wasn't magic. It was the mark of a mind so deeply sunk into the natural world, so attuned to its rhythms that it operated on a plane beyond simple thought. These were the tracker's true tools, eyes that missed nothing, a mind crammed with the brutal wisdom of the wild, the patience of ancient stone, and an instinct honed so sharp it could cut the wind. Part 4. The Shot. Thunder in the Wilderness. Maybe days, a relentless, soul-grinding pursuit, meticulous tracking, a stalk so tense it could snap a man's nerves like dry twigs. Then, the moment. The world narrows to a single point, the frontiersman within range, heart hammering a savage rhythm against his ribs. Adrenaline, a fire in his veins, yet a strange, cold calm settles over him. This is it, the culmination. Skill, patience, and a sliver of raw luck, all converging on this single, heartbeat-stuttering instant. But the hunt's not done. Not by a long shot. The final approach, the shot itself. These demand a different kind of pressure, a unique focus. If the beast is unwary, a ghost of a chance. A few precious stolen seconds to steady the long rifle, to pick the spot. But often, with game as wild and wary as elk, as pronghorn that can vanish like smoke on the wind, that window is a mere blink. The animal senses something. A head snaps up, ears swivel, testing the breeze. Every muscle coiled, ready to explode into flight. No time for doubt, no room for hesitation. The frontiersman trusts his gut, trusts the countless hours spent with his rifle until it's an extension of his own arm, his own will. He knows its every quirk, its deadly reach, its thunderous voice. An early plains hunter, his words echoing from a hard land, knew it. A man's rifle was more than iron and wood. It was an extension of his will, and in a hard country, his best friend. And that friend was about to speak. choosing the exact moment. Critical. A responsible hunter, even with starvation clawing at his belly, aimed for a clean kill. Quick, merciful, in its own brutal way. This wasn't just some modern sentiment, it was harsh practicality. A wounded animal could run for miles, a phantom leading a man on a death march, only to be lost. A poorly placed shot? Spoiled meat? A disaster. So he waits. For the clean shot, the heart-lung area, the kill zone, more waiting, more agonizing stillness even as the prey stands tantalizingly close, breath pluming in the cold air. Sometimes the land itself or the animal's own cunning denies that perfect, stationary shot. Then the frontiersman might be forced into something else. A persistence hunt, especially with bison, those shaggy mountains of muscle that could devour ground with surprising speed. It meant following, running, trying to maneuver the herd or a single animal into a killing ground, or simply wearing it down, a battle of endurance against a creature built for it, a grueling, lung-burning, leg-screaming ordeal. There are tales, hunters pushing bison for days, their own hunger a savage spur, their determination a grim, unyielding force. The shot itself, a moment of pure, undiluted concentration. The heavy muzzle loader, often single shot, demanded it. No second chances if the first ball went wide or didn't strike true. The bone-jarring recoil, the belch of acrid black powder smoke, the roar of the rifle, a crack of doom shattering the wilderness silence. A dramatic, definitive, irreversible act. And when the smoke finally clears, the work still isn't over. Not even close. He approaches the downed beast with caution. Is it truly finished? Then the bloody, laborious task of field dressing, preparing the meat for the long haul back. That's a whole other story for another time. But in that moment, standing over his hard-won prize, the steam rising from its cooling body, the scent of blood sharp in the air, there's a profound, almost savage sense of accomplishment, a primal connection, the ancient cycle of life and death played. Part 5. Learning from the First Masters. The Wisdom of the Land. No story of the frontier hunter, of his skills, of his survival, is complete without tipping a hat to the true masters, the first masters, the Native American tribes. For centuries, millennia even, before the first white man stumbled onto this continent, these peoples had woven themselves into the fabric of the wilderness. Their understanding of the natural world, of the animals that moved within it, was profound, deep. Their tracking, their hunting. These weren't just skills. They were life itself, intertwined with spirit, with culture, with the very breath of their survival. The frontiersmen? Whether they shouted it from the mountaintops or muttered it under their breath, they were students, often unwitting ones. Many of the most legendary trappers, the explorers who carved their names into the maps, they learned at the feet of native guides. Or they adopted, sometimes unknowingly, techniques passed down through countless generations of indigenous hunters. An early chronicler of the West, a man who'd seen it with his own eyes, wrote it down. The Indian hunter moved through the forest like a whisper, his senses alive to every nuance. The white man, if he was wise, watched and learned. And the wise ones did. Native Americans could read sign that would leave another man blind. They could follow a trail so faint, over ground so hard and unforgiving, it was like tracking a ghost. They understood camouflage not as a trick, but as a way of becoming. Animal skins, mud, shadows, they melted into the landscape. Their hunting methods? Ingenious, brutally effective. Communal drives, a whole village working as one, funneling bison over cliffs into cleverly constructed pounds. Solitary stalks relying on a stealth so profound it bordered on the supernatural. They knew the calls of the wild, could mimic them to lure prey into a deadly embrace. They knew the secrets of every plant, every animal, which healed, which fed, which killed. Think of the Apache, ghosts of the arid Southwest vanishing into the heat haze. Or the Lakota, their entire world revolving around the bison, their hunts not just for meat, but a sacred spiritual dance. The tribes of the eastern woodlands, masters of still hunting the wary deer in forests so dense a man could get lost 10 feet from camp. Those of the Pacific Northwest, their lives tied to the salmon and the elk, hunting in mountains that clawed at the sky. The frontiersman who stumbled into these cultures, if he had an open mind, if he wasn't blinded by arrogance, found his own skills magnified tenfold. He learned respect for the animal. He learned to take only what was needed, a hard lesson, a philosophy often drowned in the later, more destructive tides of expansion. Men like Daniel Boone? He didn't learn his woodcraft in a European school. He spent hard time with the tribes, absorbing their knowledge like a dry sponge. Lewis and Clark, their epic journey a testament to American ambition? They leaned heavy on their native guides. Sacagawea. Her name echoes, not just for finding the way, but for understanding the land, the plants, the animals, the very pulse of survival in a world that was, to the white man, utterly alien. The debt is there, undeniable. The frontiersman brought his rifle, his iron will, his own brand of desperate courage. But the foundational knowledge, how to truly live in the American wilderness, how to read its secret language, how to move with its ancient rhythms, that was a legacy, a gift from its original inhabitants. To hunt like an Indian, a frontiersman might have thought, his words lost to the wind, was to hunt with the wisdom of the land itself. And that wisdom was the difference between a full belly and an empty grave. Conclusion: the echo of the long hunt. A legacy in the wind. And so it echoes. The long hunt, down through the blood-soaked, frost-hardened annals of the American frontier. A testament, not just to a man's desperate need to eat, but to an extraordinary, almost unbelievable level of human skill, of raw endurance, of a profound, bone-deep intimacy with a natural world that would kill you as soon as look at you. The frontiersmen who mastered this savage art, they were more than just hunters. They were ecologists in their own brutal way, readers of an ancient, unwritten text scrawled in wind, in water, in the very earth beneath their moccasins. They understood the delicate, deadly balance, the intricate web of life that sustained them, and the creatures they pursued with such relentless focus. Theirs was a world where one misplaced step, one moment of lost attention, meant the yawning chasm between a full belly and the gnawing cold of starvation, between life and a lonely death. Today, our world is one of GPS pings, of high-powered optics that turn miles into yards, of food shrink-wrapped and sterile in a brightly lit store. It's hard, damn near impossible maybe, to truly fathom the depth of knowledge, the sheer, unadulterated grit it took for such an undertaking. To follow a trail so faint, it was more memory than mark for days on end. To anticipate an animal's next move with an instinct so sharp, it felt like magic. To become so much a part of the landscape that the wind itself didn't know you were there, approaching a creature whose senses were 1,000 times sharper than your own. These aren't just skills, they border on legend. An old trapper, his face a leather mask carved by 1,000 blizzards, reflecting on a life lived on the edge, was said to have whispered, "The mountains and the forests were my only church, and the hunt my deepest prayer." That era, the time of the long hunt as a way of life, it's mostly gone, faded like an old campfire. But its legacy? That endures. It speaks of a time when men weren't separate from nature, a cancer upon it. They were a part of it, a hard, vital, often brutal part, but a part nonetheless. It reminds us of the incredible, almost terrifying capacity for observation, for adaptation that still sleeps within us. The echoes of those silent footfalls, the ghostly images of men moving like smoke through primordial forests, across plains so vast they swallowed the sky. They still resonate, a powerful, haunting story of survival, of respect, hard-earned, and of an unbreakable, untamed bond with the wild, savage heart of America. My name is Sam, and this has been Wild America. Join us next time as we keep exploring the untamed spirit of the frontier. And if you want to know more about the iron that brought down the giants of the plains, the thunder sticks these men relied on, don't miss our deep dive into the hawk and rifle, a true legend, an icon of the mountain man. You'll find that story right here on the channel.